welcome to TwistBase. My name is Goddard, and today I am very excited. Maybe because it's nice weather and it's weekend as well, but also because we are gonna build a nice Flutter tutorial. So guys, this is the project we will be building today. I'll jump quickly through it. So you can click on the TabBar, which is basically a custom TabBar with custom animation. And you can see this little nice effect it's creating when you're tapping in between, but it also works when you're using the page view and you swipe right to left or left to right, and this will also indicate the animations on the TabBar items. So that's it. It's quite nice, and I'll start completely from scratch so you guys can just follow along. There's a starter project you can download from the description link, and there's also the final project if you don't want to follow along. Like, you can do whatever you want with it, really. Cool, so let's start. So when you've opened the starter project on GitHub and you downloaded it, or whatever IDE you're using, Android Studio or Visual Basic Studio, it doesn't matter. At the moment we are just displaying a white container. And if you look at the pubspec.yaml file, we have got just one dependency, which is the provider package. And I've added some custom fonts in there, which you can see in the fonts folder as well. So the only thing that is made is in the shared folder. These are basically the text or the colors, the color theme we are using on our cards. And later on I'll show you an efficient way how we can map those on our view, basically, and also some color palettes I'm using for this. Okay, so let's get started. Let's start with going to the main.dart file and removing the container. We are gonna create our home view class right here. Then we are gonna go to our views. We're gonna go new. New Dart file, and then we're gonna call this home view. This will gonna create a home view.dart. Cool. This is basically just gonna be our home class. Home view. Actually, you know, the short for creating a stateless widget is stless and stateful stfull. So call this home view. Just gonna import the material library. There we go. So this, if we're gonna rerun this, this is gonna display the same thing. What is? Yeah, we just need to import this in our main file. So there we go. I always have the habit of putting a comma behind every parentheses, so this gives a nice nested overview. So back to the home view. If you're looking at what we're gonna build, so we're just gonna start by building the skeleton of the app. So let's start by building the scaffold and adding one card in there, and then creating our rounded bottom navigation bar. So we do that by adding a scaffold. The scaffold has, of course, a body. Sorry, not a background color. A body. This is gonna be a container. Container is gonna be our global, right? We just need to import that file. Oh, it's already done. Global.white. I tend to put all the colors in the global because this you can change it later on just by going to the global file, and instead of going through your nested widget tree, which is gonna get really big in the end, and you want to avoid going too much in there because it gets messy. Okay, we rebuild. So, and then what we want is let's see. So that's just a container, right? So let's create our bottom navigation bar. So the bottom navigation bar, we don't actually need to create a bottom navigation bar object. We can just create a container. Let's give it a height of, let's say, 100, just a test. Let's give it a decoration of box decoration. Then that box decoration is also going to be of color global.white. Not much is going to change now, of course, but when we look at the image, you can see like a little drop shadow which stands out from here. And actually the main background color is not white, but it's like a light blue. So let's try this so we can see our bottom navigation bar. Now what we want to do is create the border of the navigation. So we can do that by adding a border radius, but we just want them in the top left and top right corner. So we can do that by border radius, and then we would select border radius only. We can select top left, and you have to say radius circular, and this is going to be like 40, something like this. Let's copy this for now. Top left, top right. There we go. So let's see, can we see that? Yeah, I think so. Let's check our scaffold background color for the moment, because this is, I think, is by default it's too white. Let's rebuild this, and oh, there you go. Okay, so to make this stand out a little bit more, we can also use a box shadow property in our box decoration. This takes a list of box shadow, so we can just add a box shadow in here. Open this, then our color would be the global dots. Let's try maybe a medium blue, and then the most important thing for this is it's the blur radius, right? So let's try this, if that works. So maybe this is a little bit too harsh, so I'm gonna try the light blue. Actually, what you can also do, if you feel like it could be a little bit better, is the with opacity tag, and then we would say 0.5, so it's a little bit darker. So now we can actually see what we're doing. Put a comment here, hit save, and that's that. So let's check what we're gonna do as well. Okay, so that's that. So let's build our first card. This is gonna go in the body. So this should be our main card basically. Let's create a card of, say, width, heights 100, and this should be, I'm just gonna create a like this. Okay, that's aligned like this. If you center this, it's going straight in the center. One good way, because we are working on, I mean, there's phones with a lot of different screens, so we want something generic, and one way of doing that, we can have a screen width property, and the screen width property is of type media query, media query dot of, and it's going to take this current context, then we are taking the size and the width of that. So this will calculate your the current width of your phone, right? And we can use that to define this. So this was make the you can see it makes the screen full screen. I mean, makes the container full screen, and we want to add some padding to that. So let's say, because it's going to be a square anyway, we can say minus 90, or I mean whatever you guys prefer, really doesn't really matter. So we can do something like this. Then we can actually use, we want it for all. So in our decoration, in our container, we can make a decoration object to create the rounded corners. So then we would make box decoration and then the border radius, and then border radius. This time we are just gonna do circular because it's for every 4 corners. Use 40 as well. Make sure whenever you make a decoration, you put the color in the decoration property as well. If you build now, the app is gonna crash, as you can see here, but we need to just remove this and put it inside our box decoration object and rebuild, and this is gonna make our corners like this. And again, we are also using a box shadow slightly for the on the bottom, which is related to this color, but just with less opacity. So we can do that just by copying this for a sec. The decoration, box shadow, medium with opacity. You can't really see it that much, but you need to take the blue. You can see. Okay, cool. That's that. So let's go to the most important thing for now. Let's try and create these dots. And these dots, basically, the main thing about these dots is that they are gonna be animated containers, right? So we go to the bottom navigation bar, go to the bottom, let's see, in here, then create a child, and the child is gonna be of type animated container, right? And then we are gonna create a width, let's try 10 and a height of 10. You just need to make sure the duration, because this is an animated container, we actually need a duration, which is gonna be milliseconds, 500 for now. And the color, but this is gonna take a decoration as well, so we might just well copy the whole thing. So let's take the decoration in here, drag it in here, and then just remove the box shadow property because we don't really need that. The border radius for a full circle, you always just need the half of the width, so we're gonna take 5, then build that. Wow, that's cool. So to make this actually effect, because we added the animated container directly as a child to your container, and this animated container is going to take the full width of the container, but we can solve this by simply adding a center, and then this would center in the middle. So what I'm going to do now is, obviously we need more than one tab indicator, right? We're gonna generate them right on the fly, and also the circular radius should be half or the width of the height to create a perfect circle, like you see here. So what we're gonna do, I mean, there's tons of solutions of this, but I found this solution to be quite nice. So we can wrap this in a stack, and then we are gonna generate or animated containers on the fly. So if you take the animated container, just copy this for a sec, remove this, then we would type list.generate. We're gonna create 3 items, right? And then we are gonna have an index, doesn't matter what you type in here, you can choose whatever, and this is gonna return our animated container. Just remove this and put a comma on here. So if I hit save now, nothing's gonna change because they are 3 items right now placed right on top of each other. So one way of changing this would be to add a transform property on top, and then the transform in here, you can do matrix 4.translation values. You would say something like index times 3.0, or actually times 20.0, 0, 0, if I hit save now, you can see all our objects at once, right? And let's create something like this, where we place this in the middle. So cool. So let's try to animate one of the container items to start with, right? And you would do that by, if I would say, you can the cool thing with animated containers, like you can see the animation on the fly. So if I'm typing 80 here and I hit save, you're gonna see them all animating at the same time. But fortunately, that's not really what we want. We want one to animate. So how would we do that? How would we trigger that, right? And one way of doing that is, for example, you can say index is null, right? Otherwise 20. So let's say 50. But what we can see actually, and the annoying thing is that they are animating from the center, and that's also not what we want. We want the stack alignment to be alignment dot, you can say center left, so let's see 20. This is also not doing it. You need to, if I'm gonna wrap this, if I would wrap the stack in the alignment property, or that's not a column, sorry. So we would wrap this in the align property and then set the alignment dot center left, right? So this is gonna align the whole thing to our left side. If I would animate just the first one now, you can see this is actually more likely to what we are trying to achieve, right? So that said, we know we can animate our item, right? First item from left to right, or wherever you want it to go, then back. But the issue is, let's say if I take the last index, right, and I'm animating this, what's gonna happen? This is not what we want. And this is where things get tricky, and especially for the middle one, as with the middle one, when you click on it, it's actually gonna have two sides, right? At one moment it's gonna have center left alignment, at one moment it's gonna have center right alignment. So how would we do that? And how would we, the first one is only going from left to right, the third one, or the last one, is only going from right to left, and the middle one has two basic states. So I would suggest we start going into our ViewModel class, and we have to create a sort of solution for our states, right? And we're going to do that by using the provider package. So let's go to ViewModel. Let's create a new Dart file, and I'm going to call this home model. And then we're going to have a class. It's called obviously home model, like this. And we want to do it with, if you want something, you have to call with change notifier. This allows you to call notify listeners, which is kind of similar to adding set state in okay. So what we are gonna do is we are gonna create our let's create our dot size property, which we can use throughout the case. Then we would say we're gonna use a getter, which allows people outside of the class to call the dot size, but not actually modify it, and that's exactly what we want. Then also get the horizontal spacing property to calculate our total width, right, which is the full width of our 3 dots. We are multiplying the dot size times 2, because these two, there's always 2 that have the same radius basically, right? Then we have the dot size times 3, because the long one is always going to be the size of 3 dots. And then we have the horizontal spacing, which is the spacing in between. That's gonna define our full block basically. Going on, we are gonna find a way to center this in our screen, so it's not here, it's actually here. But because we can't use a center property, because this will move things around when we're animating them, we have to do this by using the transform property. And we are gonna create, so the width, this is defining our screen width. We would divide that by 2 to get the half of the screen, which would be here. And then we are taking the total width of that property, right, and divide that in half as well. So this would be result in a value that is center aligned for the property. For the spacing, we are gonna take our, and the I is the indexes obviously. We're gonna return the horizontal spacing, which is gonna be multiplied by our index, which creates this as we've seen before. Then we are gonna do this minus, when the index is nil, you don't wanna subtract anything. Then otherwise we are doing the width minus the dot size times 3, and the reason is because these other two are not left aligned, and so their current position always starts here. So we want to subtract this with the width of the screen, right, minus the current dot size times 3. So they will start from there, because they start counting from here, and the first dot starts counting from here. So this gets a bit tricky. Then for our animation, we can use the dot size, right, and we would multiply it for the index of the list, and this would be the index of the tab item that's currently tabbed, which we still have to make, and times 3, because we want the dot to be 3 times bigger than the normal dot, right, and this will create that nice little effect. So these will be this is gonna be our index indicator whenever we press it, which we're gonna make with GestureDetector. The move middle property, because the move middle is gonna notice when this is gonna be moving. When I would press the orange dot right now, the middle one is also moving its position, that is moving the same position as this one would move. So the middle one is also moving, so that gives another level of complexity for the middle dot, right? We need to have a Boolean value for is tabbed, because this is something I'm going to show later. That's not, very important now. So let's create our method basically to keep track of what index is pressed, and we can do this by creating a method called updateIndex, which is going to take an index parameter, and in the end it's going to set that index, right, to be the one we just passed, and then we have to call notify listeners. This is something that is going to notify all the listeners that is going to be used outside of this class. Basically, whenever we call model.index in our home view, it's going to trigger that, similar when we would write set state in a stateful widget, but because we're using provider for state management, this is the way to go. Then think about it like this: when we are pressing, so when we are gonna press this one, right, we want to move the middle one along with it as well. Otherwise, this one won't be visible anymore, as we're using a stack, and this is the first one in the stack, second one in the stack, third one in the stack. So how do we do this? So we can just say whenever the index we passed is the last one, right? We want to translate, and this is also going to be a method we are going to create. We want to translate x something like, or dot size times 2, because that's how far we want to do that, and it needs to be go in the minus direction, because remember they are aligned from this way, and we need to go this way, right? So when this one moves here, this one needs to move here as well. And otherwise we are doing the same thing, translate x, but no. Let's just make sure we keep the double. Then we are gonna create our translate x class, which in here is gonna take a our value basically. And this is gonna say move middle equals the value we just passed in, and then notify your listeners from outside this class. And that's it for our home model. This is obviously the most trickier thing, but now we are gonna see how we are gonna use this in our home view. So back to our home view. So let's set up our provider package, right? So we are gonna go to the main file, and we're gonna wrap our home view in an change notifier provider. This is gonna give a warning that you need to define the create, and the create is gonna refer to our model we just created, our home model class. So the create takes the context, and we are gonna return our home model, right? And then initiate it. Put a comma here, rebuild. So going back to the home view, now we can wrap this in a consumer, and these are basically the three main things about provider, right? We wrap change notifier provider in here. We extend our model class with change notifier, and in our home view we can now wrap this in not a stream builder but a consumer, which is also from the provider package. This is going to specify the type of home model. Yeah, we don't need this. Let's see, was it? Just need to make sure. It's taking a builder, and this has three properties: a context, model, and the child property. And now in our scaffold we have access to all the properties that are defined by our model. So in here we can say we just need to fix something as well. So remember, when our index is the first one in the list, we wanna make sure this one is center left, and the other two are gonna be alignment.center right. So this is gonna mix the whole thing up. Sorry, what is this doing? Oh yeah. So the issue is that we have to align our property inside the list. So let's, because the index is not currently, we need to go a level down. So let's remove this. I'm gonna remove the align from here, and then on top of the transform, I'm gonna do that again. Call this align, and then the alignment method here. Now we do get access, and this is going to mix things up a bit because they are going to disappear now for the moment. But then if we are calling, let's see, so for example in here now we can add model dot size, and in here we can just specify, because this is our main animation, we can say model dot animation, and I'm gonna pass in just our index, then our transform property, which is gonna be related to the spacing, model dot spacing. We are gonna pass in the screen width and our index. Spice double can be, that's because we still need to, if we just use matrix 4 translation values, pass it in the X value, and 0, 0. If I'm gonna rebuild this, what is gonna happen now? This is the current state of it. Right, so this is our setup for the moment. So everything is almost done here. The only thing we need to do is like this center property or widget has no function for us anymore. Now we can transform this, and then again transform matrix 4 translation values. And to fully center this, we are going to use our model and the center property, where we are passing our screen width, and then for the Y and Z we don't need that, and then hit save, boom, just like that, right in the middle. So one thing we still need to do in here, the animated container, remember our middle dot needs to move as well when we click it. So we are gonna, the animated container has a transform property as well. This again is gonna take matrix 4 translation values, and in here we have to call the model dot move middle property, right? Whenever we tap the move middle, but we don't want to call this for everything on the list. We want to call it when, right? Index equals 1, which is because this is the middle one, right? Move middle. For the other two, we don't want to do anything. We just pass null. This, of course, is not going to change anything because now we are going to start with the GestureDetector, and to do that, we are simply going to wrap our animated container inside a GestureDetector widget, and then we have an onTap property. And for now, let's just print the index, and the index here is referring to our list index. So if we hit save and click on the first one, we can see the output here, right? 1 and 2. If you click anywhere else, nothing's happening, of course, and that's how GestureDetector work. And the only thing we need to do here is call the model.update index with our current index. When we rebuild the app and we click, we're gonna see the animation happens, right? It's all working fine, we think, but then when we click the middle in this state, it's not working. So why would that be? And the issue we're having here, the GestureDetector is at the level and the animated container is moving, but we are moving the middle one when this one's moving. So actually what's happening, the middle one, we can click it in this state, but when it's moving along, right, the middle one is actually here, which is underneath. And because this is a stack, we are pressing the last one in the index. So we need to solve this by putting the GestureDetector one level down. So we can let's create first, for example, a child on the animated container, which is going to be an animated container as well. A duration of duration, I mean, it's going to be the same. And then in a bit, we're actually going to use this container to animate the colors on the values. And this one is mainly for the width because they also have gonna have different curves. So let's say this is gonna be 1 second, and it's gonna have just some box decoration as well, just like that. Sorry, decoration, box decoration, global blue, yeah, that's fine. And now we can actually we can swap this GestureDetector with our child. So at the moment this GestureDetector will move with the animated container, and that's exactly what we want. So if we rebuild this, just do a hot reload, hot restart, and we are in this state, we can see that we are now able to press the middle one as well, because it's moved. The GestureDetector is moving with our move middle, which we defined in our home model. Cool. So I think the hardest thing is done, and so now let's start with the cool stuff, right? This is gonna be quite fun. So first, let's change something about the GestureDetector. Sorry, the animated container. What we want to do is we want to change the curve on that, and we want to do the curve dot elastic out, do a hot restart, and this is gonna give it a much nicer sort of animation. Let's make this 750 or something, 700. It's gonna do a hot restart. Yeah, something like this. That's feeling much better. Moving on to the actual fun part, the actual styling of the app and the card. So what we're gonna create our title, our headline, and our kind of bottom with the text. So yeah, let's start doing that. So let's go back to our body. And the container currently has no child, which we will define here. And the child is going to be of type column, right? Because we want to stack things in a vertical way. The column is going to take the children properties, and we are going to have for the first one, it's going to be a row because we have the top left icon and the text behind it. So a row property also takes children, and this is going to be icon. The icons dot inons. Wow, great. Icons dot light. I mean, God thanks Flutter, they made it for auto completion. Like if you had to type this all by yourself, that would be really amazing. Okay, so we would have a row here, icons light bulb dot outline, and then a text widget, which is gonna take what was it again? Phase one light configuration, something like that. What is this gonna look like? This is gonna obviously it's gonna align it from the top left corner. So in our main column, let's just create some main padding to the whole thing, and I want to do really like probably like 40. And then we are gonna create some styling on our texts. This is gonna be of type text style. We can also set our color. which is gonna be global dot white. Cool. The same for the icon. You can set it directly on here, global dot white. Here you go. Bang. Text style, what else do we need to do? Probably a font size that is a little bit more subtle and lighter. Let's try 12. Is that? Yeah, that's a lot better. And then the icon size as well. We want to do that. Well, say 12 as well. Cool. Now there's two ways you can put spacing here. You can actually in the main axis alignment you can do space evenly or space between, but what we want to do is we're just gonna create a sized box, give it a width property, and then say like maybe like 10. Sorry, I need to put a comma. Yeah, probably like this. Let's see the main axis align. What? No. So going further in the column stack, this is our row widget, and this would be the next one. So this is gonna be a bigger text that is gonna say, what is it gonna say? Remote light configuration in this case. So remote light configuration. Let's copy this text style. Comma. Text style, color, global white, font size. Let's go very bold. And the font family is gonna be of type SF. SF is something we defined in our pubspec.yaml file, which is this basically, and it's gonna take our fonts, custom fonts. If I run this, there you go, remote light configuration. That's looking alright. And then the last one in the list is gonna be I just made a container, it's not a raised button because at the moment it's not doing anything really. A container, let's define the decoration properly. Actually, let's just grab some of the decoration so we don't need to okay, decoration, box decoration, border radius circular. Let's define the color. Is gonna be global dot white. Whoa. Whoa. Oh yeah. Why is it doing that? Of course. It's not showing up. We still need to define, let's say, a width of 100 and a height of 44. Maybe width of 150. Cool. Okay, let's give it a child of, let's say, another text widget, right? And the child's gonna say, what was it saying? View lights. Yeah, okay, view lights. So view lights, and the style is gonna be of type text style, color, global dot white. Actually, let's just take something like this. Global dot white. We actually want the text, the color to be global dot blue, for example, and we want to center this text object in our container. But I want the font family to be more bold, so let's use the SF, something like this. Now let's go to the spacing of this. So how do we align this properly in the stack? The first thing would be in our column, we need to go to the main axis alignment, and then actually, sorry, we need to go to the cross-axis alignment because we are going to horizontally align, right? Cross-axis means in the way a row is aligned. So you would say cross-axis alignment dot start, which would be around here. See, and now the main axis alignment of the column should be main axis alignment dot let's see, we can use if you use space between, this is gonna stack it, and it's just gonna make sure there's always space between all the objects, which in this case is quite alright. Let's just create this, see what it looks like. That seems quite similar to me. Maybe this text can be a little bit bigger. There you go. Cool. So that's done. So what are we gonna do now? Like, how are we switching pages? And I think you could do this in many ways, but I find the PageView builder a very easy way of implementing this very quickly. So what will we do? We are going to create a PageView builder around, or you can do it right yeah, just really in the padding property. So if I'm gonna wrap this, let's say a center, and I'm gonna say PageView dot builder, this is gonna take an item builder property, not tracks our behavior, item builder. Item builder, what is it actually gonna take us? I forgot really. So the item builder takes a context and an index. So the context and then the index, and then it's gonna build the item, right? So we want to take our whole the padding right here. Gonna copy this, gonna cut it, and then in the item builder I'm gonna return or padding, right? So we need an initial item count, right? For us that's 3, and when I hit save now, you can see that we actually this issue we're having here, we just need, this is just where your PageView builder is leveled on the stack, right? At the moment it's just taking this, but we actually need to wrap this whole thing in a container. And then what we need to do is remove all this, and the direct child of the container is gonna be of the type PageView builder. Then in here we are gonna do this. Yeah, this sometimes gets tricky because the whole stacks is basically it's getting a mess. So what you can do is from where it is located, so probably container, remove that and remove this. Let's see, what is this doing? Expected to find one more. Oh yeah, we need to add those in here as well. But there you go. Cool. So that's doing exactly the same as before, but then now it's actually gonna do the whole page, right? Because our container is the top level, we didn't specify any width or height properties, which means it's gonna take the whole page as it is. Cool. Moving on. So what are we gonna do next is we're gonna make use of the model or the globals data. We are actually gonna map that on top of the card and create our model class, right? So in our core folder, going down to models, let's create a new Dart file called cards, and it's gonna be a class cards, custom cards, because there's also another card class in Flutter. Custom cards. So the properties on this is gonna be the color, which is gonna be the text color. We have a background color, we have an icon, which you can see here. You have a title here, and the headline, the big text, and then the button title or button text. Up the class constructor, we can create a class constructor. Let's import the material library first, and you're gonna see why this is very useful. Basically, what the constructor is doing, whenever we're gonna pass the data map in here, which is related to the map from the globals, right? So by doing this, we have direct access on the object itself, without having to do this every time in the UI. And you can do this as well. You can just use this in your home view, but then it's very easy to make mistakes, and you have to make sure you're using the correct key, and things get really messy in the end if you're using a lot of objects. So this is a very clean way of doing this. And the way we would do this is, let's go back to our home view, and let's say in our item builder, right, we can create a variable called final card is card dot. So we need to create custom cards, and our from map property we created, and in here I'm gonna say global dot our card data list, and then we're using the index from our PageView builder to specify this. So now the cool thing here is, like, we only need to do this once, and let's say we are going to where we actually hard-coded everything. Like, for example, if I remove this and I type in card.icon, this is a valid way, and you can see everything on this object are the ones we specified. So let's go through them very quickly. We are changing this card text to be the title, and the remote light configuration to be the headline. Cool. What else? This is gonna be card.button title, and we need the main background color. So this is gonna be card.background color, and then we still need the main background color, which is specified in the in here. So we card.background color, and then in here card.background color with opacity. Let's hot restart this for a sec to see where we're at, and there we go. We got our data set up. Maybe the box shadow should be a little bit less, like 35 or something, something like this. Cool. So that's working. Our indicators are working. So now we are gonna actually make this page fully functional, right? How would we do that? So for example, when we click on the indicator, the page should change, right? And also when we swipe left or right, the indicator should update as well. So the cool thing about the PageView builder is that it has the properties for that, but first we need to add a controller, right? And to add a controller, we have to create a stateful widget just like this, and we can create a page controller of page controller, right? And this is gonna, we have to initialize it like this. And now we can, and here we add the controller right here. So now, if we would go to our indicator where we update the index, we can say PageController.AnimateToPage, and then we just pass in the index, and the duration is gonna be, I mean, again, you guys can pick whatever duration you want. Let's do 1 second for now, and the curves dot ease in, what I think works quite nice, maybe quartz dot animate to. Okay, let's see what happens when we do this. There you go. So that's that. Maybe I think this can be a little bit faster, like 500. You don't want the user to be waiting too long as well. So yeah, that's doing that. Now, how do we want to update it when we do it in reverse, when we're actually not touching this, but we still want the status to be updated? So we can do that by going back to the PageView builder, and they have a property called onPageChanged, which also you need to not int but the index. So when the page changed, we have to call the model and then update the index with our new index. Do something like this. So let's do a hot restart. And there you go. So that's doing that exactly like we wanted. So the only thing we need to do now is update or get these colors. So what we can do is in our let's see where we at. In our list, we can create the same property card, and we can where we are specifying our color for the animated container, we can say card.background color. Dot reload, and we can see we have our live colors. Cool. Final thing we need to do, so at the moment you can see when we click on the tab this way, it's doing something weird, like it's almost like it's being called 2 times, and that's also exactly what's happening, because when you click on one of these, the model.update index is called, but also the page view on page changed is also called, because even if we're not swiping left or right, we're just using this. And to solve this, we can keep track of when the model or when our tab is tapped actually. So from the moment the tab we tap, our tapped would be equal to true. And if we go back to our on page changed, we would set the model.isTapped as false. And then at the top, we would say when our model is not tapped, then only we should update our index. So if we hot restart again, now you can see it's working normally like it should be, and it's still working when we do the page view. Well, that was it. I hope you guys, honestly, I hope you guys learned something on the way, because that's the main goal of this channel, basically to share the knowledge. I would love it, you guys, if you could share some feedback, and if you like it, just subscribe to my channel or just like the video.